Inshallah, people can come close. I can tighten up the gathering. Inshallah, there'll be more barakah and blessings that way. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillahi wa kafa, wa salamun ala ibadihi allazina istafa, amma ba'd. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, ku anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O those who have iman, ku anfusakum wa ahlikum nara, that you should protect yourself and protect your ahl, your family, your children from the fire, from the punishment of the fire. This means that this is related to our very iman. There is a responsibility that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed upon us, that we are supposed to protect ourselves as well as our children. Parenting is something which all of us want to excel in, even a non-Muslim. We have these websites, books. I think no one wants to be a bad parent. And that's why we have all of these books and self-help manuals. But if there is a natural desire within all of us to become a good parent, in the deen of Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes this to full splendor by commanding us, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ku anfusakum. It's a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we need to become good parents. The three things to remember about children that are mentioned in the Quran. First is that children are a trust. They are an amanat. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we will ask you about this trust on that day. And the second thing is that they're also sadaqah jariyah. There's one very famous hadith, most of you would be familiar, that every one of us, we will be asked about our flock. Each one of you, you're a shepherd, and you will be asked about your flock. We are a shepherd in the sense that we will be asked about our family, our children, our ahl. And that means that there is a sense of responsibility. Number one, we should acknowledge and appreciate this responsibility. And secondly, we should also be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah has placed this responsibility upon us. Why? Because this is an incredible opportunity. These children, they can become sadaqah jariyah for us, which means that when we die, our deeds can still multiply. There are so many stories that people would pass away and they would look at their book of deeds and say, Ya Allah, we never did such and such a deed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say that this is because of your children, the pious offspring that you left behind, that they were worshipping me, doing ibadat, ita'at, and you will be getting the reward for it. So this is a precious opportunity that sometimes we may not be able to develop ourselves Islamically. Maybe we were not able to become hafiz or an alim or a mufti or someone pious and close to Allah, a lover of Allah. But if we can raise our kids in such a way that they can become like that, then inshallah all of that will go into our account. So it's a big, tremendous, huge opportunity. And the third thing to remember is that in the Quran, Allah mentions that these children, your family, they can also be a test for you, a trial for you, a temptation for you. And Allah calls them a fitna, a fitna. It's a test. And what exactly is the nature of this test? That they can sometimes wealth in your children, they can divert you, distract you from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we understand that they're a fitna in the sense that they can make you heedless, ghafil of Allah, sometimes make you do things which are displeasing to Allah, make you stingy in the path of spending for the sake of Allah. So one has to be careful about that. And if you look now, what are the parenting tips? There is so much overlap between us and Islam and what we find in the West as well. There's so much overlap, but obviously we want to do this Islamically. We want to add the Quranic, the Sunnah teachings, and a lot of research is just confirming what we already know in our deen. So I want to talk about something tonight, which is the imani aspect of tarbiyah. There are a lot of aspects, but the spiritual imani dimension, I think when we want to raise our children, our kids up, to raise them up in an Islamic way, what is that Islamic element? So I want to share a few things about that, but before I do, I want to begin with two principles. Two principles. I want to preface this with these two principles. The first is that if you look at all of Islamic teaching, the way we're supposed to implement them is that we're supposed to have a loving and a gentle and a kind demeanor towards our kids. The Arabic word that is used in the Quran and in several ahadith is rifq, to have gentleness in our approach. And in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah loves this gentleness, and anything which has gentleness in it, it becomes beloved to Allah. Nabi alayhi salatu was rahmatul lil alameen, the mercy for all of humanity. So we need to have that element of mercyful in our nature, mercy giving, that gentleness in our approach. And one of the things that we learn is that at least one of the parents, they should befriend the child. They should be best friend, whether the mother or the father, because we all know that al-mar'u ala dini khalilihi, that a person will be on the deen of their friend. So if we can befriend the child at that age, then the child will naturally grow up with that relationship, will imbibe those qualities and values with us. When we look at the life of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, we see that the Prophet ﷺ exhibited this, would not just have love for the kids, but he would also express that love in a very clear and a distinct manner. There's so many episodes of that. So for example, Hazrat Anas radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that when he was describing the love of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam for children, he would say that I have not seen anyone who was more merciful towards his family than Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam. That's a big statement. And then we also know that whenever the Prophet's system would be praying salah, and a child or his grandson, they would climb over him on the back, he would either prolong his salah, and sometimes very gently he would take the child, put him on the ground, then do the sajda, complete the salah in that manner. This is happening in salah, during salah. And we all know the importance of salah. Salah is the coolness of the eye of the Prophet ﷺ. Salah is a very serious ibadah in our deen. And we're supposed to have that khushu, that khuzu, that awareness, that inner life within salah. And despite all of that, we see this khuluq, we see that in this state of ultimate closeness and intimacy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam had this characteristic towards his children. He was mindful of his kids around him. We see that, for example, once he placed Hazrat Usama radiallahu ta'ala an and Hazrat Hassan radiallahu ta'ala an, placed both of them on his knee, and then he would tightly hug them and make dua for them. That, oh Allah, have mercy on them as I have mercy on them. Again, highlighting that principle, that not just have love, but also be expressive in our love, in our affection towards them. There's a very beautiful hadith once. Sayyidina Hassan radiallahu ta'ala, and he was riding on the shoulders of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And one of the Sahaba, he remarked and said that, what a beautiful ride. And the Prophet ﷺ said that the rider is also beautiful. The rider is also beautiful. So there are different ways in which we express this love. You call them by a loving name. We see that in the Quran as well. In the story of Sayyidina Luqman alayhi salam. Out of all the stories, Allah Ta'ala chose this one particular story, a conversation between father and a son. And this is ajib because there are so many father-son conversations happening throughout human history. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to highlight this one specific story, made that part of His kalam, made that part of His Quran. And there is a lesson for us in that story. There is a lesson, a very deep lesson. We see the number one, the words of affection. Ya bunayya, the way you address your child, that, oh my sweet child, my loving, my dear child. You create that bond, that relationship by addressing them in a loving way. And then after that, we see the presence, that your father, the mother, they're present with the child. Having that quality time, that presence is important. And then only when you have that loving affection and you have that quality time and presence with the child in their life, that is when you can do nasiha. That's the third step. We find that guidance as well. And guidance was about the iman, about salah, about adab. But teaching and guiding and counseling, it's built upon this foundation of affection, love that is being expressed, but also this presence, that you're with them when they need you. So this is one thing that we remember. We see in the Sunnah ways of expressing love, whether it's by words of affirmation, whether it's by spending quality time with the child. And also we see physical touch. So many stories how Nabi alayhi salatu would physically touch them. Sometimes touch them on the head, on their cheek, shake hands with them, shaking hands, handshake. Doing musafaha, there's a very, a simple handshake. We learned that in hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that shake hands with one another, for this removes malice from the heart, the kina, the ill feelings that we have. This is the antidote for this. Shake hands with each other. And in the commentary of this hadith, Qazi Iyad rahmatullah alayhi said that whenever a person would shake hands with the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ would keep holding his hand and the other person would be the first to let go. And this was the sunnah, that not just a cursory, a superficial handshake, but a very deep engagement, interaction with the other person. And then many junior Sahaba, when they would grow up, they would remember and have fond memories about the time when they would physically interact with the Prophet ﷺ. Someone would be touched on their face lightly by the Prophet ﷺ, and they would recall that I smelled the fragrance of the blessed hands of the Prophet ﷺ, which was more fragrant than anything else I've smelled in my whole life. So this is really important. Again, we see that science and research confirms. One Harvard study mentioned that the kids whose fathers hugged and cuddled them while they were young, they are significantly less likely to have problems like trauma, bedwetting, violence, aggression than those fathers who did not touch their kids. Now, the second principle is also that we want to do tarbiyat. We want to say things, counsel them, guide them, advise them. But for that, we have to say the right thing at the right time. And right there, we should actually make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first, that Allah give me that tawfiq and the ability to say the right thing at the right time. This is hugely important. And what are the right times? So again, some research tells us that, and this is something I think all of us can experience, that we don't remember everything that happened in our childhood. But there are some core memories, some core times, some core events that become an unalterable part of our memory. So there are 4 times which are particularly important, 4 times which form part of our core memories, and these times are very crucial. First, they say, is travel time. Travel, bedtime, meal time, and when you're sick. These are 4 times that we can use to instill Islamic values, lessons, morals. Why? Because these form part of the core memories of a child. And I think all of us can go back and revisit our childhood and we can see that we don't remember everything, but these are the times that stick with us. So, for example, the first is during travel. During travel. When you're traveling with them, whether on vacation or a trip, family outings, that is a time, it's a new environment, new situation. It's an opportunity for one to explain things to their kids, and those things will stick with them. And again, we find many examples of this in ahadith, where Nabi alayhi salatu would be traveling. And while traveling, he would be instructing, he would be teaching. So in one place, there was a young boy, young Sahabi, Hazrat Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma. And the Prophet ﷺ was riding with him on the same ride. And the Prophet ﷺ said to him that, "O Ibn Abbas, O young boy, that you should be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the more you're mindful of Him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be mindful of you." Happening while traveling. Second is bedtime. Again, this is also a time when usually kids are more talkative and we spend this time in useless, mundane activity, but use that as a conversation, as a story, something which can impart lesson, something which can impart that akhlaq and then adab. There's so many stories we can take from the Quran. If we can make up our own stories as well. Pick some hadiths, design that into a story, and use that as a bedtime story for our kids. And third is during meal times, and this should be a habit, a very important etiquette and habit to instill very early on, right at the outset, that we should have at least one meal every day as a collective family unit. To establish this as part of our training, Nabi alayhi used to instruct at this time as well. So there's one Sahabi who narrates that I was eating with the Prophet ﷺ, and I was eating in such a way that my hand was all over the place, roaming here and there, here and there. And then the Prophet ﷺ addressed me, he said that say Bismillah before eating, eat from your right hand and eat from that which is closest to you, nearest to you. And the fourth is during sickness. Sickness naturally is a time when a child is sick, they're ill, they want that affection, they want that love, they want that time, and they're more prone to receiving information from you when you give that with muhabbat. Very beautiful story about a boy who was a Jewish, he was with his father, and both had love and respect for the Prophet ﷺ. And the child was on his deathbed, about to pass away. And Nabi alayhi came and paid him a sick visit, Iyadat Mariz, and then said to him that I want to invite you towards Islam. And that young boy, he looked up at his father, and the father nodded his head, and the son, he recited the kalama, and then he passed away. So it's a beautiful moment during sickness to say the right things at that time. Now, I think what is most important is that when we want to raise our kids, we want to raise them up Islamically, according to the values of our deen. And this, in one sense, it means that we make them regular in our salah, recite the Quran, fast, etc. But there is something deeper here. And that is their yaqeen on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Their absolute conviction, faith on Allah, their connection, that love that they have with Allah. This is something which they need to be trained in. And I'll just mention three things here, and they come from this idea, this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, dua that we're taught that we should be making, that when a person enters inside their grave, we have these three questions: Man Rabbuka, Man Nabiyuka, and what is your deen? Who is your Rabb, who is your Nabi, and what is your religion? And then similarly, there is also another hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said that make this dua, Raditu billahi rabba, wa bil islami deena, wa bi Muhammadin sallallahu alaihi wasallam nabiyya. That I'm razi, I'm pleased, I'm overjoyed, I'm happy, I'm thrilled that Allah is my Rabb, that the Prophet ﷺ is my Nabi, and Islam is my deen. Now, using this, we can formulate this into three questions and and have like a mini sessions on this, that who is Allah, what is Islam, and what is the Prophet ﷺ, because a lot of the kids, they don't really know these things, and I'm sort of pitching this at the age group, which is like 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way till 13. They might know that they have to pray, they might have to fast, but they really don't know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. That deep marifat of Allah, the deep awareness and recognition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because normally what will happen is that at the age of 7, we start telling them to pray. And at the age of 10, then you have to enforce that they must be praying at that time. So they have this idea that we have to pray, we have to fast, we have to give zakat, we have to perform hajj, and so on and so forth. But they don't really know much about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. To give like an introduction one-on-one on who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, sometimes you even ask them. And they say, who is Allah? Well, my mom forces me to pray. Allah forces me to pray. That I have to pray. This is what my introduction to Allah is. That I have to fast, I have to pray, I have to do this, I have to do that. So going one step deeper here and introducing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as that being who loves you, who provides for you, who gives you everything. This roof that you have over your head, given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the one who forgives people. He is the one who guides people. He is the one who showers mercy upon people. And I was thinking about this, the same thing with Islam as well. What is Islam? Islam is a religion of peace. It's a religion of justice. You know, if we can have like a convert when they convert and you ask them what is Islam, those are the things that we need to teach our kids as well. Not just enough that they will hear this from me, because there's so much out there. There's so much out there, Islamophobia, there are other things which are happening in the name of Islam. That talk has to be done by us as parents. Teach them what Islam is, what the right image of Islam is. Same thing with the Prophet ﷺ as well. The akhlaq, the adab, the character, the beauty, so that they fall in love with the Prophet ﷺ. And then it becomes easier for them to imbibe and inculcate that in their life as well. So then the question comes that how would the Prophet ﷺ do this imani tarbiyat? How would he do this imani tarbiyat of the Sahaba? And we know that the Sahaba, they would say this about themselves, that the very first thing we learned was Iman, and then we learned Quran. And that's the sequence of tarbiyat, that we learned Iman, and then we learned Quran. And what that means is the stronger one's Iman is, the quicker and effective it would be for them to understand the Quran. That's the foundation. They will be able to accept the teachings of the Quran if they're built upon Iman. The basis is Iman. So you have the foundation, and then you add the Quran on top of that. And this is what we see, right? That the Prophet ﷺ would be teaching Iman to the Sahaba. Teaching Iman, that who is Allah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with you all the time. He is closer to you than your own self. He is closer to you than your jugular vein. فَإِنِّي قَرِيب. He is qareeb to you. He is near to you. Because children, they're born on fitrah. This is another thing we learn in the hadith, that every child is born on fitrah, pure, untainted, pristine, which means that they have a qalb salim. They have a pure heart. And it's only their parents, by their tarbiyah or the lack of tarbiyah, they transform their kids into either someone of the other faith. So it really depends upon how we train them. They begin with this blank slate. So since they have this fitrah, to protect that fitrah, enhance that fitrah, to direct that fitrah, one of the episodes we see that Hazrat Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala an, he said that once I was going in a deserted area, and I met someone who was fasting, and he had some sheep with him, some goats, some animals. And I asked him that, why don't you sacrifice one of these and then you can have it for iftar? And he said that, no, I'm not the owner. These animals belong to someone else. So I said that you can still do it. No one is watching. And immediately he replied, فَأَيْنَ Allah. What about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This awareness that what about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So this is that Imani tarbiyat that we see in the Sahaba, the beginning of the Imani tarbiyat, it begins when the ruh comes inside the body, which is after the first trimester. The ruh enters at that stage, and there's a lot of ahadith that mention what should be done during pregnancy. A lot of things have been written that a woman can do at that time. And the number one thing is that your own worship, your own ibadat. You need to be strong in your ibadat, strong in your tilawat, stay away from sin, leaving sin, staying away from all haram activities, especially any kind of haram watching or haram listening, because everything that a person does in that state, it directly impacts the child. It impacts the ruh of that child as well. And similarly, during that time, a person should be making lots of du'as, massive du'as. We see this in the story of Sayyidina Maryam alayhi salam, that she became, when her mother, she became pregnant, and she was making du'a and continued making du'a for 9 months. So obviously, those du'as then will have an effect on your child. Once the child comes out, our scholars, they say that the very first thing that we should teach to our kid is the name Allah, the word Allah. The first thing to teach the child is to say this word Allah. Again, here sometimes we make a mistake. Most parents, they say teach mama, baba, something else. Teaching Allah. In one hadith, we learn that when the child says Allah for the very first time, and this is the first words that come out, then as a result, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives all the sins of their parents. Allahu Akbar. So the parents that are recommended, both father, mother, to say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name thousands of times every day, and especially when you're putting them to sleep, when you're making them eat, we should all include the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second thing to teach the child is the kalima, which is La ilaha illallah. And again, there are some rhymes we can use, some formulas, some lullabies that we can sing to them, but we should try to incorporate the kalima, La ilaha illallah, whether it's in Arabic, it's in English, or it's in Urdu, whatever language, we should try to have those lullabies which have the concept of Tawheed in them. And again, the purpose of teaching the name of Allah, of teaching the kalima, is so that from the very outset, the focus is on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To teach them what we call istihzar, the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is with you wherever you are. Allah is watching you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking at you. This presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this awareness about the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this in Arabic is called istizhar. And this is something which our Salaf Salihin, they would do with their kids. One example that Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh, he has mentioned in his kitab is about Hazrat Sakhti rahmatullah alayh, that when he was 3 or 4 years old, he was a big wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, 3 or 4 years old, his uncle told him that remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the child asked that, how should I remember Allah? And he said, repeat this formula before going to sleep, do it 10 times. Allah is with me, Allah is looking at me. Allah is with me, Allah is looking at me. And this became his habit. And then he said that now what should I do? He said that now increase this to 21 times. Allah is with me, Allah is looking at me. And then eventually this became part of his nature, his tabiyat. I came from Seattle, and there I met someone who was saying that habits and good habits are really important. Someone was telling me a story. He had a friend who was diagnosed with cancer, and the doctor said that you have 3-4 months left. And he said that I went up to my friend, and I was sort of hesitant asking him this question, but then I did ask this question. I asked him that, look, you have 3-4 months left. Give me some advice. Give me some advice. That if you had to do things all over again, how would you do it? And he said that, my friend, my advice to you is that form good habits. Why? Because if you are told that you have 3 months left in this world, it's very difficult to change bad habits. Even if you want to, you cannot change it. So it's very important that when you have good habits, then automatically things become easy for you. But changing all of a sudden, that becomes really difficult, even when you know that I have just 3, 4 months left. So at the outset, having good habits, inculcating, educating our kids in them, that's really important. Now, these are three things to remember. First was to teach them the name Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Second was to teach the kalima la ilaha illallah. And third was this teaching that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always with us wherever we are. These are the roots of the Imani training, Imani tarbiyah. Then after this, we have some general principles which we want to quickly mention. The first one is that we should try to develop a marifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, an awareness, a recognition, a love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our children. Now, what does marifat mean? Marifat means that a person should become acquainted with Allah. Acquainted with Allah, just like sometimes when you have like a khala and your child hasn't met her khala, you say that in that fala city you have this aunt, and you tell your child about your aunt, that she loves this and she likes this and she loves you. In the same way, to instill the concept of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in their hearts, right at that age. It's basically helping the child in their thinking process, teaching them how to think, what to think. So introducing that, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given slipping off. Can you guys hear me? Yeah? Okay. So something helping the kids to think about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the way sometimes we do this with our child is, I already mentioned one thing, right? That make them repeat this sentence, Allah is with me, Allah is looking at me. And also to become people who are thankful servants of Allah ta'ala, to show gratitude. And this can again be done very simply, just every night to make it a ritual that what do you want to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for? Pick one thing. And should be something new, something happened during the day. And then they can tell you stories that I thank Allah ta'ala for this, Allah ta'ala for giving me this toy or something. So inculcating gratitude that all of these blessings are given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then along with this, the child should also be given some concept of halal and haram, gradually, that this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves, and this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes upset with. Again, linking the do's and don'ts with Allah, that this is linked with the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to ensure that they stay away from those things which are forbidden. Just like we don't want physical harm for our kids, they go next to a heater, they're touching an electrical cord, we scare them away. In the same way, to have that level for their spiritual detriment as well, that to scare them from all that is haram, that this is something which is bad, this is a bad thing, this is a sin. And sometimes you might need to overreact as well. That did you lie? And he says, yes, I lied. And you said that now the angels are moving away from you, right? There's a bad smell that is coming from your mouth. So to show that distaste for that, what they do. But one of the things is that we hate the sin, but not the sinner, right? You hate the sin, but not the sinner. You don't say that you are bad, but that amal, that deed that you do, that was not good. That was not good. All right. Then the next thing is, and I just maybe, I'm going to skip a few things here. One of the really important things we see is that we need to work on our own self first. You cannot pour from an empty heart. You cannot pour from an empty glass. And the children, they love to imitate. The imitation starts quite early on. There is a beautiful dua that Allah mentions in the Quran. وَأَصْلِحْ لِي فِي ذُرِّيَّتِي وَأَصْلِحْ لِي فِي ذُرِّيَّتِي. That, oh Allah, grant salahiyat, grant islah. Both meanings are there.
grant ability, capability to my children, and rectify them. Inni tubutu ilayk, and I make tawbah to you. Wa inni minal muslimin, and I'm from the Muslim. I surrender myself to you. Now, what do we learn from this dua? Number one, that we're making dua for our kids, that Allah bless them with two things. Number one, ability, capability, salahiyat, that they can excel in the dunya, in their deen. And also we're making dua that give them islah. Allah rectify them. Allah do their islah. And for both of these things, we're linking this with our tawbah. Allah, I make tawbah. I make tawbah. And when we make tawbah, and then I surrender myself to you, I become the first of Muslims, the first of Muslim. I surrender myself, submit myself to you. And what we learn is there is a very subtle connection here, that when we make tawbah, when we submit, when we surrender ourselves before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is what is going to seal the akhlaq of our kids. The virtuosity, the ihsan, the excellence in our kids will come when we fix ourselves. When we fix our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rahmat, this will attract that rahmat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will fix our relationship with our kids as well. We see an example of this in Surah Kahf, Al-Kahf. Allah mentions, there was a story, there too, Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, the Nabi of that time, Sayyidina Khizr alayhi salam, the Wali of that time. Both of them, they are building, as Khizr alayhi salam, he's building, he's rebuilding, repairing a wall that is about to fall. And as Musa alayhi salam asks him that, why are you doing this? Because the people here are not hospitable towards us. And in reply, Hazrat Khizr alayhi salam says that because وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا, that this wall, underneath the wall, there is a treasure. And the treasure belongs to two orphans. And these two orphans, they had a father. The father was righteous. The father was pious. And in some riwayat, it's mentioned that this was not the immediate father. This was way up, 7 generations up. The father was pious, upright, and righteous. And as a result of that, 7 generations down, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is commanding the Nabi of that time, the Wali of that time, that go repair this wall, because this wall contains a hidden treasure that belongs to those two orphans. So, very important lesson that we talk about hifazat of our kids. Here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing hifazat of not just the iman of those kids, doing hifazat of their dunya, pure dunya, and sending a Nabi, Kalimullah, his Nabi Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, to do hifazat of that. So, it begins with us. It begins with our own islah, that we make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we leave sin. And the second thing that we also see in the Quran is that we also try to become someone who remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala abundantly. Why do I say this? Because you might think this is unconnected, unrelated. Us doing zikr and parenting, yes. Our zikr is a spiritual necessity for our parenthood. If we want to be good parents, if we really want that imani aspect in our parenthood, to transfer something from our heart into their heart, that nur, that iman, that itminan, that barakah, that solace, that serenity, that tranquility, all of that, if you want all of these things to be transferred into the hearts of our kids, for that, we need to have these attributes within us as well. And how to get all of these things? It begins with zikr. Allah says in Quran, Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. To know that only and only in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do hearts find that itmina. We think that sometimes our remembrance, our zikr is something which is optional. And sometimes we think that this is, I'm too busy for this. I'm too busy being a father, too busy being a mother, too busy with other things in my life. I don't get time to do zikr. And now, watch this sentence, because if you're a good father, our definition of a good father would be that, okay, maybe I work for them, I earn money, I'm a good mother, I provide food for them, I provide clothing, house, necessities, comforts, luxuries. But that's something which an atheist father is also doing. An atheist mother is also doing. Where is the iman? Where is the ruhaniyat? Where is the nur? We were supposed to transfer that nur of iman, that itminan from our hearts into their hearts. And for that, we need to do zikr, because that is where the hearts will find itminan. Our jism can get itminan from the things around us, the comforts and luxuries of life. Our mind can get itminan from different things that we read, ideologies, philosophies. The itminan, the solace and the serenity of the heart will come only and solely from the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we do zikr, we will have itminan in our hearts. That itminan will be transferred into the hearts of our children as well. And what happens is that if you embrace your child, we bring them all the way up, cuddle them, we embrace them, hug them, they come so close to us, and yet they go empty. That nur which was supposed to be transferred from our heart into their heart, that itminan, that sukoon that was supposed to be transferred, we don't do that. We fail as a father. We fail as an Islamic father. We fail as an Islamic parent, as an Islamic mother, when we fail to transfer that itminan into their hearts. And we all know that children are masoom. From 0 all the way till 13, 14, until they attain puberty, they're masoom. Masoom means that they are sinless. They can be naughty, they can misbehave, they can run around, but they cannot do anything which will put a black spot on their heart. Because we know in a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that when you sin, a black spot comes on your heart. Children, because they are masoom, they're innocent, they can do whatever they want, but the black spot will never ever come on their heart. Their heart, in other words, is qalb salim. It's a pure, pristine, untainted heart. And what that means, and this is why it's very important, because hearts which are pure, they can naturally take in all of that itminan. They can take in that nur very, very easily, very, very quickly. For us, it's difficult because we have tainted hearts. Our hearts are impure. We need to first purify. It's a two-step process. Purify, then get that in your heart. For children, it's very easy. And how does this relate to us? Because when we do zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we get itminan. The kids will also get itminan from our hearts. And imagine if you live your life like that, from 0 till 13, their hearts are getting itminan from your heart because you are doing zikr of Allah. You are remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You form a permanent bond with them. Their hearts are naturally attached to your hearts. Your heart becomes like their qibla, where they're getting all of that solace and serenity, and that bond remains with them. And now what happens when they cross puberty? When they grow up, teenagers, now when they go out, they will have different influences, university, school, college, friends, but still because that bond is with you, you have a permanent bond with your kids, that bond will still remain. And they will continue to have that taluk with you, they'll stay with you. And on the other hand, if a person is heedless, they don't do zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're neglectful themselves, means that their heart is empty. Empty heart cannot give anything. The child comes so close to you, but goes empty-handed, empty-hearted. And then what happens is when they cross puberty, then other things become their qibla. Other things take over. So extremely important that we try to inculcate this. And sometimes people say, I'm not that type of a person. I cannot remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala abundantly. My tabiyat is not that of a zikr type. Allah says in Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu udhkurullaha dhikran kasira. That all those who have iman remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala excessively, abundantly. This has nothing to do with temperament, nothing to do with my nature, my tabiyat, my mizaj. This is iman linked with iman, that if we have iman, we want to be complete and perfect and true in our iman. Allah wants zikr. Allah wants that we are thinking about Him. This is going to give itminan to our hearts, and then also naturally by default give itminan to people around us as well. The next principle is that we should inculcate the love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So first thing was inculcating the ma'rifat of Allah, love for Allah. Second thing, developing the love for the Prophet ﷺ, and again, telling what the Prophet ﷺ was like, what he used to do, how he used to do it, and mentioning any time, every time we mention the Prophet ﷺ, mention that with love. Mention that with a level of reverence, with respect, so that that love and respect, it comes into their heart as well. And here again, stories are the best way. Stories from the seerah, and for that one may need to brush up their own seerah. Stories from the hadith as well. You can convert a hadith into a story. And there are so many beautiful hadiths like that. So this is something that we can do. In one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that teach your children 3 attributes, 3 qualities. Number 1, love for the Prophet ﷺ. Number 2, love for the Ahle Bayt, yani the family and the household of the Prophet ﷺ. And number 3, love for the Quran. We're going to come to that in a moment. Love for the Quran, right? And I've noticed, children who are very young, 2, 3 years old, if you say Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, it's not difficult. They can mimic, they can imitate that as well. They can say it, right? We try with them. You can teach them, and you can let them say that statement as well. Then the third thing is to develop a taluk and a connection with the Quran. And again, how to do that? First of all, teach adab, that this is the kitab, respect the kitab, the adab of the Quran. But again, one should not be too strict here. Why? Because they may not be able to form an attachment if you're so overly strict with the other part. But, teach them that you pick this with adab, you keep it on the top, on the shelf, and then also try to develop a love for the Quran. Love for the Quran. We should give them an opportunity to do hifz of the Quran. I think every child should be given opportunity. Every child, whether a boy or a girl, given an opportunity to memorize the Quran, give them 2 years, 3 years. If they cannot memorize the whole of Quran, no problem. At least some parts, 2, 3, 4 juz, that training should be given, that opportunity as a parent should be given to our kids. We should give that opportunity to our kids, that we encourage them to learn the Quran. This is something which will benefit them not just in their deen, but also their dunya. That they will develop the ability to memorize. But the main thing is that they should not be pushed so hard. The main thing is that they should do this with love. They develop this love for the Quran in their heart. We see that the Sahaba, despite all of the khidmat of the deen that they were doing, they would take out time to teach Quran to their children. One very famous Sahabi, Hazrat Abdullah ibn Masud radiyallahu ta'ala an, he was on his deathbed, and in the last stage of his life, someone came up to him. He only had daughters, no son. So someone came to him with a gift and said that, accept this gift from me. You only have daughters, you can use it for your daughters. And Hazrat Abdullah ibn Masud radiyallahu ta'ala an, he replied, he said that, no, take it away. I don't need this. And he said that I've taught Surah Waqia to my daughters. And I've heard from the Prophet ﷺ that whoever recites Surah Waqia every night, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will save that person from poverty, from financial difficulty. And I've instilled this as a habit within my daughters. Every night they recite Surah Waqia. This was the training. This was the tarbiyah. This was the trust that they had in the Quran. Similarly, there is another story about Allama Shami rahmatullah alayh. Allama Shami was a very big jurist. His name was Ibn Abadin rahmatullah alayh. But before he became an alim, it's mentioned about him that he was working in a store with his father. And he loved the Quran so much that in that store, that shop, he would be reading the Quran all the time. So once someone came to him and said that this is not the best of adab, that you are reciting the Quran, people will come and think that you are reciting the Quran as a marketing tactic. He wasn't doing it for that reason. He was pious. He was doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then someone else said that you are reciting Quran, people come here, people will be listening to you. but they won't be paying attention to the Quran, and this is sort of slightly disrespectful. So here they said this to him, but what was the result? What was the reaction? Allama Shami rahmatullah alayh, he said that I will continue reading the Quran, but I won't work here in this store. He asked his father that put me in a madrasa, went on studying in a madrasa, and then became an alim and one of the biggest scholars that this ummah has seen. Right? So this is something that we see the barakah of the Quran, that if you have love for the Quran, respect for the Quran, then this will bring barakah in their life. Then the next principle is to teach salah to our kids. And this is really difficult, really hard part. And this doesn't happen automatically. Initially, there might be a phase where they might be imitating you as the father, the mother, you're praying with them and they're praying with you. They'll come, maybe they'll lie down, they'll jump on your shoulder. But then at the age of 7, you start teaching them how to pray properly. And then we see that if they're not praying by 10, you start enforcing them, enforce upon them. Again, it's a habit, that this should become a habit by the age of 10. This needs to be inculcated at that time, by that time. In one hadith, it's mentioned that when a child can differentiate the left hand from the right hand, at that point you should inculcate the habit of salah within that child. So these are the things that salah should be taught then between this age, 7 till 10. There are many ways this can be done, having charts or a reward system, punishment system, and then first start with one salah, then build it up to the second, then the third. And similarly, when for example, the parents are praying, they can call the children can join and they can all pray as a family. So this is also a good way to have that family feeling. And at the same time, you're also teaching your kids how to pray. When it's time to come and bring the kids to the masjid, we should try to tell them about the etiquettes of the masjid, the covering the head for the women, wearing the scarf properly, to develop a love for the masjid, wearing clean clothes. And also, we see that the children, they love to play with water. So to teach them about wudu, how to make wudu. In salah, along with this legalistic aspect, what is also crucially important is to instill the feeling of salah, the feeling of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within that salah. And we see that the Salaf Salihin, they would work on this dimension as well. There's a famous story about Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh, his mother. Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh had a brother, Ahmad. And Ahmad would not pray behind Muhammad Ghazali. And he would say that, I don't want to pray behind my brother. This became like the talk of the town. Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh was upset. He went to his mother and said that people are saying things that Ahmad is not praying behind me, you should counsel him. So the mother, she called Ahmad and said that you should pray behind Imam Ghazali, he's your elder brother. Khair, so now he's praying. He's praying behind his brother Muhammad Ghazali. And what happened was that right midway, he left the salah and he went away. Now this was even more embarrassing. One is not to pray behind your brother, and the other is that you break your salah and then you just run away. So Imam Ghazali rahmatullah alayh came to his mother and said, this is what happened. And she called both of her sons and said, and first asked the elder one, Muhammad Ghazali, that what happened. And he said that I was praying salah, and then for a moment I was distracted. I was thinking about something else, something other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in my salah, some masala, some dini masala, and my attention, my focus moved away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during salah. And she asked the younger brother, Ahmad, what about you? Why did you leave? And he said the same thing, that I was looking into the heart of my brother while he was praying salah, and I noticed that my brother, his attention was moving away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and hence I don't want to pray behind him. When he said this, the mother said, both of you are useless for me. Both of you, woe to you, you're useless for me. one of you is thinking about dunya in their salah, and the other is thinking about what lies in the heart of your brother while they're praying salah. Both of you are useless to me. So this is how they would do tarbiyat of their kids. Then we should also try to instill within the habit of fasting. And I think kids are already eager and motivated they're excited about fasting, especially about iftari. Before reaching puberty, we should encourage them to fast. They can fast maybe some hours during the day. They can fast maybe during Ramadan as well. They don't eat anything in the morning, in the noon, and afternoon. So this is something that we should instill. And when the child fasts for the very first time, we should have like a little party for them, do something special, celebrate that since it's their first fast. We find this also in the ahadith, that the Sahaba Ikram, they would encourage their children to fast even though fasting was not fard technically for the child at that time. And how do we know this? Because it comes in a hadith that the fast of the 10th of Muharram, which is Ashura, this was their fard in the pre-Islamic days. So the Sahaba Ikram, they narrate that we used to make our kids fast on the 10th of Muharram. And how old were the kids? They say that the kids used to cry from hunger. They used to cry from hunger, and we used to give them toys. So they're kids, right? They weren't that old, so they would be fasting at that age as well. Now, there are many. So two things, and then we'll end, inshallah, is that when I gave this talk at another place, one parent came up to me and said that I haven't been doing these things. And I feel that my children now, they're rebellious, they're no longer what we call innocent masoom. They're 15, 16, 17 onwards. And what can I do? What should I do? You mentioned in the Quran, there is an ayat in the Quran where Allah says, وَلَا تَكُمْ مِنَ الْغَافِلِينَ, that don't you dare be amongst the heedless. And Allah Ta'ala also says, فَلَا تُطِعْ مَنْ أَغْفَلْنَا قَلْبَهُ عَنْ ذِكْرِنَا. This is a really important ayah that directly applies to all of us. We should be thinking about this ayah all the time as a parent. Allah is saying, فَلَا تُطِعْ وَلَا تُطِعْ, do not listen, do not follow, do not obey, do not do ita'at, man, that person, أَغْفَلْنَا قَلْبَهُ عَنْ ذِكْرِنَا, whose heart we have made empty of our remembrance. That ayat applies to us. That if my heart as a father is empty of the remembrance of Allah, Allah is giving fatwa to my kids. Don't listen to your father. Don't listen to them. Because his heart is empty. His heart is empty of my remembrance. So again, tying in that we need that remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our heart. But what if we haven't been doing some of these things? It's never too late. In the deen of Islam, this is the beauty, that the first step would be that a person makes istighfar about their past. There's a beautiful hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said that when you make istighfar, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts blessings. Allah Ta'ala will place blessings in your rizq, will place blessings in your awlad, your children, in your relationship, in your work. Abundant of istighfar is the solution for our worries, for our grief, for our issues, for our problems. We haven't used this recipe. We haven't used this treatment, abundance of istighfar. At least 100 times in the morning, 100 times in the evening, we should be doing this, istighfar. And then the second thing we see is that when we do istighfar, when we make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we have that real remorse and regret in our heart, sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give us all that we lost out. All that we lost. This is the rahmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That there was a sahabi by the name of Hazrat Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala an. He had a habit of praying tahajjud salah. Regular habit, mashallah. Every night, tahajjud. He would He would rise up, pray tahajjud in the last 1/3 of the night. One night it so happened that he was tired, he slept late, and he missed his tahajjud. And then after Fajr, he made it up, and he was extremely repentant, nadamat, nadim, very remorseful and guilty, and made istighfar, turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, repenting, cried a lot for missing the tahajjud. Some days later, a similar situation again occurred, that he slept late, and it was close to the time that he would again miss his tahajjud. But right at that time, someone came and woke him up. And Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala said that, Jazakallah for waking me up. I'm able to pray the tahajjud. Who are you? And he said, I'm Shaitan. And he said that Shaitan normally doesn't wake a person up for tahajjud. Why are you waking me up? And he said that I don't intend any khair and goodness for you. The reason is because last time when you missed your tahajjud, the amount of remorse and regret that you had, Allah gave you the reward of 100 tahajjud for that nadamat and for that tawbah, for that remorse that you had. And this time again you were about to miss your tahajjud. And again you would have had that same level of regret, and you would have gotten 100 reward of 100 tahajjud. So better that you get one reward for one tahajjud as opposed to 100 tahajjuds. So I'm still not in your favor, I'm still your enemy. But this is what we learn from this. From what we learn from this is that if we missed it, if we lost this path, we weren't good parents, we were neglectful, we were heedless. If we begin with this baby step, that we make istighfar, we make tawbah, we have that remorse and regret, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can restore us, inshallah. Allah ta'ala can restore all of that barakah, can bring all of that back for us. Allah ta'ala is Kareem. And the second thing is never underestimate the power of dua. Never ever as a parent underestimate the power of dua. Mother's dua is ajeeb, it's incredible, it's tremendous. A dua that a mother makes for her child is like a dua a wali and a friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making for you. Yani it's even higher than that. Imam Bukhari rahmatullah alayh, he lost his eyesight when he was young. His mother made dua for him, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala restored his eyesight. And we know Imam Bukhari rahmatullah alayh, you can't become a scholar without reading Sahih Bukhari of Imam Bukhari rahmatullah alayh. So mother's duas can work miracles. So never ever underestimate the power of dua. We see that duas are supposed to be made, and we're supposed to make them consistently. Hazrat Zakaria alayhi salatu wasalam wanted a pious offspring, continuously making dua until he reaches that stage in his life where his hair has become white, his bones are feeble, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted that dua. So it means that for du'as, we should never ever lose hope. We should continue making dua, be persistent, be consistent, be regular. This is the sign of a true believer, that they never despair from the rahmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A weak believer is someone who makes dua 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, and then they leave it. They say, Allah doesn't listen to me, Allah doesn't accept me. A true believer is someone who continues regardless what. Knows that I don't have any other door to go to. This is the only door. I'm going to attach myself to this door. I'm going to make dua. Keep making dua. So that's one thing to remember. And second thing is to make dua with conviction, with certainty. This is again a mistake that many of us we make, that we're making duas but half-heartedly. Making duas but lacking in that yaqeen, sometimes even doubting our own duas. And this is really dangerous. Why? Because Allah says, in Hadith Qudsi, Allah Ta'ala says, Ana inda zanni abdi bi, that I am with my servant as they think about me. So if a person starts doubting their own du'as, that I don't know whether this will be accepted or not, then that is what's going to happen. So here Allah Ta'ala is making a promise to us, Ud'uni astajib lakum, that make dua to me and I will accept your du'as, and yet we start doubting. We start having misgivings, ill feelings, ill thoughts towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I don't know whether my dua would be accepted or not. This is coming from shaitan. This is coming from shaitan. We need to dispel this thought and make dua with full conviction, with full certainty. Even shaitan's dua was accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So why shouldn't my dua be accepted? Allah ta'ala will surely accept my dua if I make dua with a heart which is attentive. And third thing is to make dua with the feelings of dua. Make dua as if our life depends on it. Make dua with that humility, with that ajazi, that humbleness. Allah wants us to make dua, and especially when tears begin to flow, that is what attracts the rahmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should make du'as for our children, but always remember to make du'as with this kafiyat, that you make du'as for them consistently, make du'as for them with conviction, with certainty, and make du'as with humility, with that feeling of humbleness. So the last thing is that we should remember this ayat of the Quran. Ku anfusakum wa ahlikum nara, that we have to save ourselves and we have to save our family from the fire. This is not some optional extra credit, some nafil task. This is as farz, as obligatory as salah, as fasting, as any other obligation. That we need to work on ourselves, we need to work on becoming a good parent. This verse should be with us all the time. We should memorize this verse, recite this ayah. You should be reciting this to yourself, in your head, in your mind. Ku anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. That save yourself from the fire and save your family from that punishment. And we should be thinking, is there anything that I can do to protect my family from that punishment? Is there any effort that I should be making here? This istizar should be there. This awareness, this presence should be there. And this is really what parenting is all about. The real parent is someone who has fikr for their children's akhirah. Not just fikr for their dunya. This dunya is a passing stage. This dunya is fleeting, it's temporary. The real concern, the real fikr, the real worry should be what happens to them when they pass away. Not what happens to them when I pass away. That's normally what we think about. What will happen to them when I pass away? The real fikr is about their akhirah, that what will happen to them when they pass away. So we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant all of us the tawfiq, that we can act upon this. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us parents, good parents. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make our children the coolness of our eye. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Before we end, we'll just make a short dua. Inshallah, make dua. Subhana rabbiyal al-wahhab. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammadin wa barik wa sallim. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. Ya Allah, Rabbi Kareem, ظلمنا أنفسنا. Allah, we have wronged ourselves. We have done zulm on ourselves. Allah, we have allowed ourselves to become distant from you. Ya Rabbi Kareem, we come to you tonight in Tawbah. Allah, we ask that you accept our Tawbah tonight. Ya Rabbi Kareem, Ya Allah, we make Tawbah for all the sins that we have done, for all the sins that we have forgotten, for all the sins that we did during the day, and for all the sins that we did during the night. Ya Rabbi Kareem, Ya Allah, we ask you that you accept our Tawbah tonight. Allah, your beloved Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam said that at-ta'ibu min ad-dhanbi kaman la dhanba lahu, that a person who makes Tawbah is like that person who has never ever sinned in their life. Ya Rabbi Kareem, Ya Allah, make us such. Ya Rabbi Kareem, we present our hearts to you tonight. Ya Rabbi Kareem, remove the ghafla from our hearts. Allah, remove the sin from our hearts. Ya Rabbi Kareem, remove all the unlawful temptations, the unlawful desires from our hearts. Ya Rabbi Kareem, Ya Allah, our hearts have become blackened, our hearts have become hardened, our hearts have become darkened. Ya Rabbi Kareem, Ya Allah, you are the Mukallibul Qulub, you are the changer of hearts, you are the purifier of our hearts. Ya Rabbi Kareem, you are the true Muzakki Hakiki. Ya Rabbi Kareem, do tazkiyah of our hearts tonight. Allah, we present our fragile hearts to you. these hearts of Iman in you. Allah, accept us for the revival of Iman, for the renewal of Iman. Allah, accept us, Ya Allah, for the completion and the perfection of Iman. Ya Rabbi Kareem, Ya Allah, grant us the sweetness of Iman. Ya Rabbi Kareem, enable us to follow in the footsteps of the Nabiyyin, the Siddiqeen, the Shuhada, the Salihin. Ya Rabbi Kareem, Ya Allah, whatever we, Ya Allah, these ahadith mubarakah, these teachings, Allah, that we studied today, Ya Rabbi Kareem, Ya Allah, grant us the tawfiq that we can also become good parents to our kids. Ya Rabbi Kareem, make our kids the coolness of our eye. Make them a sadaqah jariyah for all of us. Ya Rabbi Kareem, Ya Allah, whatever pious intentions any one of us have in our hearts, Allah, accept these du'as from all of us. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على حبيبي خير خلقي محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين آمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين جزاكم الله خير السلام عليكم ورحمة الله